Good evening, y'all. This is Spencer Cat coming at you live from the Hillbilly Think Tank, live here in Tunnel Hills, Kentucky, where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what makes life worth the living. Y'all, here in Kentucky, we are some of the most patriotic folks that I know of, in addition to being some of the friendliest folks. So, that's why I'm trying to remind us all that this is, you know, Agriculture Week, and to thank the folks that grow our agriculture, give us our agriculture. Um, there is a huge opportunity for this county, which is very heavily agriculturally dependent. Thank God, still, there's 800 billion right now to be had if folks will tap into Make America Healthy Again. They have a plan for that money to be used for conservation of the soil. Do anything we can to make sure that we don't lose our topsoil, we don't have all this erosion. And it's back to that, getting down into using cover crops, doing things like no-till planting. It's a whole so-called revolutionary way of doing things, but all it really is going back to what we did before we started this industrial agriculture, like we talked about last night. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it again tonight. So, before we do that, let's remind ourselves why it is that we've really got to leave this military industrial complex, industrial agricultural complex behind. Leave it in the dirt and go back to the good way of farming that our grandparents knew. It's possible. We don't have to stay in this system if we'll just remember that there actually is something to be said for the old ways. And these old ways held our community together for so many years. And as we lost the old ways, we've lost our community. So let's bring it back again. All right, here's somebody you might know. And he became a good friend with Wendell Berry. Wendell Berry has been leading this, remembering, retaining, and reusing the old ways of farming.
Organic. I was doing a play at Chicago's magnificent Steppenwolf Theater in 1995, a Sam Shepard play called Buried Child. And this great actor named Leo Burmester, who is no longer with us, he was this great ebullient character actor from Kentucky. And he had worked at the Actors Theater of Louisville, and he knew not only of Wendell's work, but he knew the family and the community. And one day he handed me a book of these short stories. We had become friends, and he said, I think these are up your alley. And I read them, and it changed my life. He was so right on the money, because all of it, he writes poetry and essays and fiction, and it all, it's all fueled by the same gas tank of common sense and a simple affection for other people and for the creation, He understands that no matter how flashy your car is or your city, at the root of it, it all had to come from the dirt and the soil and the trees and the water and the air. And we've all been taught to ignore all that stuff and just become really good consumers. And as I was making the transition from a little rural town and this family, some of whom are farmers, into living in cities and working as an entertainer, it was exactly the antidote that I needed, because I was like, I don't feel good about. I want to continue to be have the gardener mentality that my mom and dad gave me, but here I am learning to take the subway and, like, to never see trees possibly. And so this is something I immediately clung to. Some of the families that he writes about just really moved me, and he almost always makes me cry and laugh. He's also really funny. um, and and so I just, the more I read of his work, and the more I eventually got to know him and his family. And as a performer, I don't think, I do some writing myself, but I know that I'm not the greatest writer, and so that's how I approach it. I say, uh, let me start off by saying I'm not the greatest writer, but I'll try to make you laugh and pass along some wisdom that I've gleaned from some people that I do think are the greatest writers. And I'm so grateful to Shakespeare and to Wendell Berry and a whole bunch in between the two of them, because I have a voice and I'm sitting in a chair in front of a camera, and he's not going to show up here, so I can tell you what he said, and it all works out.
So, y'all, again, this whole is Agriculture Appreciation Week. And, well, we're in a place where we really get most of our income. If you took away Fort Knox, which of course is a big income maker, but other than that, the heart and soul of our county is agriculture. Always has been, and hopefully always will be. So, another Wendell Berry saying that's similar, it's in that same vein that we just heard from Offerman, is that a good community ensures itself by trust, by good faith, and goodwill, by mutual help. A good community, in other words, is a good local economy. That came from Wendell Berry, 2010, What Matters? Economics for a Renewed Commonwealth. That's nothing that we need more right now than this renewed commonwealth, this renewed county, because we're just such a great place. We don't want to lose what has really made us great, which is our community, our soil. So this captures, in my opinion, the core motivation behind sustainable farming. Love for the land, love for the work, and a love for the community. And so this is something that's just so apropos of our time and what we need. So, all right. Well, let's look at a little bit of our current headlines. If we need some more motivation to realize that we just have to stop doing what we've been doing and getting back to some of those, if you want to talk about good old values, or these are the good old values: the soil, love of the land, love of the community. Those are truly good old values that we all share and need to really go back and soak ourselves in. So, all right. So we know that the Treasury Secretary has said they have lifted the sanctions on Iranian oil. So now 140 million barrels of Iranian oil are available to global markets. Well, of course, who are the only folks that can really buy it? China and Russia. So we are giving our three top enemies more money. 140 million barrels of oil. Right now, a barrel is about, I think today it was $112 a barrel or more. So we're giving billions of dollars to the country that we're fighting. that is 40, that's going to be $40 billion over what they already had budgeted for their military this year. So we're giving them more than their military budget in profits and expecting this Iran war to go well for us. How can this be? Now, I don't want to see another Kentucky soul lost to this war. I don't want to see another American soul lost to this war. We've already lost 13 souls. And that is a very heavy price to pay for what we're doing. So, well, let's consider the fact that we can get off of oil if we get off of all the reasons we need to use it. One of them is shipment of food all around the country so it can finally make it to our grocery and we can drive out there, buy it, and come back. What if we don't have to use all that gas to do that? Instead, we can grow the majority of what we need right on our own, backyard. Let's see though if maybe this 140 million barrels of oil that Iran's selling, maybe there is something in a strategy that I just don't understand, and that we really do have a plan. Let's look and see. So, what plan could actually be had, or actually could there be for giving our enemy a huge windfall in money, giving them more money than they even dreamed of before this thing started, making them richer than they were before we started this war. So really, who could be benefiting? Let's see. Well, who's hurting from it? Let's look at that. Interesting. So we're looking.
Figure out what's missing here. Someone was nice enough. They can keep removing it. I got 100. It's third time.
I just don't know how much more it could be in people's faces. People that aren't paying attention. People that are denying exactly how corrupt Donald Trump is. This post right here is from a reputable financial analyst. He detected this unusual activity. As soon as Trump made that post, oil prices nosedived. The sitting president is manipulating the markets with his own social media account on his own social media platform. It's not the first time he's done it either. Do you remember the terrorist fiasco? The day that he had Charles Schwab in the fucking office in the Oval, and he said outright on camera, he made $2.5 billion today. According to some other dude said he made $800 million today or something like that. Insane amounts of money that they made because he made a Truth Social post early in that morning and said, now's a good time to buy. That is market manipulation. It's fraud. MAGA, you
So we've got market manipulation for cronies of the administration. We've got market manipulation for a 19-year-old that was given $30 million to invest in petroleum right before this war started. That 19-year-old's making a killing now. Again, he needs to be in uniform quickly. All right, who we got online tonight? We got Coffee Cat saying, absolutely, the elders knew how to do it right. When talking about, they knew how to farm correctly, right? And we got away from it. Donald. Hello, all, says Donald. Hello, Donald. Welcome. Copycat shouting right back at you. Awesome. So, y'all, we know that they're manipulating the market. They're manipulating us. And apparently we don't mind being manipulated, I guess. I'm not quite sure, how we can keep falling for this, but unfortunately we are. So the way out, what is the way out? That's the question. Well, again, one of my ideas for the way out is we need to get unplugged from the system. So we know where the system's coming from, who controls it. We need to control our own systems. All right, let's look at, again, one more plan, if there is a plan. So a new assessment in the Washington Post has stated that the primary objective for the Trump administration's war with Iran is now opening the Strait of Hormuz. So I make a stupid decision. Something really bad happens. I convince my followers the problem is now magically solved. I reverse my stupid decision. And we're just on this continuous loop, it seems. Anyone else?
They don't
Think that's
We also don't fight
what
with
we got
stupid
going?
rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country.
Those are the words of a potential war criminal right there. And that is not the advice and counsel and direction that any Secretary of Defense should be providing our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. It puts them actually in greater danger. The Secretary of Defense is a disgraced major that was kicked out of the DC National Guard. He has no qualifications whatsoever to be the Secretary of Defense other than his extreme loyalty to the president. Again, those are the words of a potential war criminal.
We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement.
so. Yeah. And what other things has this administration been talking about? Bombing the infrastructure of Persians. So bombing their water supplies, bombing their electrical grid. Yeah, those are war crimes. According to the Geneva Conventions, those are war crimes. So our president said he was going to be doing that. He's backed away a bit of it now, lying to us, telling us he's negotiating with Persia, with Iran. But yeah, he says he's going to commit war crimes. Now, I know all y'all think he's a buffoon and that, oh, he just jokes. The people that actually like us, oh, no, he just says things all the time. He's just joking. Well, really, is this a time for jokes? I don't think so. We've lost 13 Americans. That's no joking matter. That's not a time for saying things that you don't mean because you're not a serious person. You have no serious plan. So again, my way to get by this, I've got an electric vehicle. I've had it since 2022. I decided even before that, my wife and I had a Chevy Volt with a V. You can buy them used at a good price now. The Volt got 40 to 60 miles on its battery, the plug-in battery. And then when the battery ran down, it would kick into gas. You could have a gas car and it got like 90 miles a gallon. But we hardly ever, my wife rarely ever had to plug her, she rarely had to use the gas because she plugged the vehicle in every night, went to work 5 miles away, could run any errands in town, make it back to the house, and the battery wasn't even dead. We were living in Montana. We bought it in Virginia before I retired from the military, used it in Montana for so many years after Virginia. And my wife's family in California would call and say, hey, what's the gas price out there? My wife would be like, I have no idea. I haven't had to go and fill up the tank. Well, yeah, for years now, I haven't known what the price of gas was since 2022 when I bought a fully electric vehicle. And, I drive by and see prices if I choose to look at them, but I don't have to. And that is my way, like I've said before, of getting off the military industrial complex of which petroleum is a huge part. But in addition to that, I'm going to grow as much of my own food as I can this year. I'm going to keep on learning it as I go. Of course, I did some of this when I was young, but we never understood or did this no-till farming method, which I'm getting into now. And so, yeah, I'm trying to reclaim my soil in my yard, and we'll see how it goes. Got the bees, they're ready and rolling. The chickens are fertilizing everything constantly. So that's a good thing. Let's get someone else's lowdown here on what happens when you get off of the system, how that actually helps us individually and what it feels like. It's kind of a cool sensation from what this person will tell us. Let's see here if I'm sharing the right one. Yeah, there we go.
The system needs.
My dad goes, "Hey, the school called us and told us some kid's been beating you up every day. Why don't you tell her?"
The system needs you more than you need the system. Once you can provide your own food, water, energy, and shelter, you become very difficult to control. And systems built on dependency hate independent people. Hello, cows. Where are my frogs at today? Oh, there they are.
My dad goes,
So I might not, well, I don't have enough land for cattle. I do have enough land for quite a few chickens. We've got our own eggs. And we've got, enough roosters right now. It's time to cull a few and have a meal. We've got a few quail. I need to perfect that a little bit. We didn't get any hens out of all the eggs we hatched, or at least none that survived. But next thing will be, I raised rabbits when I was growing up. Easy source of meat to raise and harvest. And heck, if you really want to be independent, you can use their pelts, make things out of that on your own. So my next goal will be a solar power grid with storage batteries, so I can get completely off the grid, but still, still living urban ish. I live in the county. So the big idea for me is I would love to power my electric car completely from the solar source. I can do that, and that's my next goal. And hopefully I can make that a reality. All right. Got some more comments here. So Mike, welcome. Mike says, love me a good electric vehicle. EVs are good for national security because they're energy dependence. Exactly. That's exactly why I'm there. Besides the fact that I'm not buying gas, and that's saving me a lot of money. Car's paying for itself. And honestly, I said before, the Chevrolet Bolt sells new for under $30,000. So, Donald, so is a healthy populace, but the admin really doesn't give a damn about national security. So, yes, exactly. Tom says, I'm hoping to expand my garden this year too. Yeah, it's going to be a great year. We should all share our knowledge. So, all right. So true, Donald Wart, Mike says. Copycats, chicken and veggie gardens go hand in hand so well. Oh, yes, they do. Tom says, the Home Owner Association where I live prohibits raising livestock for profit. Paisley is seriously thinking about adding a chicken or three and telling the HOA that we aren't selling the eggs. And exactly, if that's the rules, then they're leaving plenty of wiggle room. If you're just doing it for yourself, that's not for profit. When I first started doing this, actually, it was when I was on active duty. I grew animals and raised animals a lot growing up before the military, but I was stationed in Virginia Beach somewhere around 2010, 2012. Took my son to a working farm that was actually a petting farm also in Virginia Beach, and he got to hold some chickens for the first time in his life. And he's like, I want some. I'm like, you know what? We've got a backyard. I want you to have some. Can't remember if I knew it at the time or not, but apparently there was an ordinance against backyard chickens in Virginia Beach, which was really crazy because a lot of Virginia Beach, that's not right in the urban area. A lot of Virginia Beach is farm country. They incorporated the city incorporated the county years ago, so a lot of the area there is still farm country. Sadly, there was about an 80-acre farm on one end of the community that I lived in, the subdivision. And I thought, oh man, it's wonderful. This old ancient farm that's been there since the 1700s. Yeah, they destroyed it, made it into a development right before we left. Heartbreaking. But I got some backyard chickens, and then they were doing great for quite some time. My wife fell in love with them. We were gardening, composting. Well, one day, the house next door to me went up for sale, and the realtor turned us in, and we had to get rid of the chickens. I gave them all to that farm where my son had fallen in love with chickens in the first place, and his rooster was the star out there, and our hens were, lived a good life. But, that's a problem that a lot of people need to overcome. And if your HOA, Tom's giving you wiggle room, wiggle all you can. Tom said, we had solar panels installed a few months after buying this house. What do you, I don't know if I ever noticed that, Tom. How are they treating you? The solar panels. A neighbor had chickens a year or so ago, and the HOA made them get rid of them. Dang it. The neighbors didn't use the loophole. Man. Tom says, I know people who live in old Louisville who have poultry. Yeah, Tom, where my son lives, which is property that my wife has in the Taylor Berry neighborhood of Louisville, he's raising backyard chickens. He's doing some raised bed gardening. And awesome thing is, before he ever got his chickens, we could hear some of his neighbors. This is in the city. It's wonderful. Some of the neighbors, you could hear the roosters crowing. So I'm like, if they're doing it, definitely not going to be a problem. So that's the cool thing about not living in a ritzy neighborhood. No one really gives a crap what you do because they're trying to just survive. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Renaissance Hillbilly, good to see you here tonight. I thought about getting chickens, but my cousin has some nearby, and she's always losing them to owls, foxes, raccoons, possums, and bobcats. Well, you just got to use that hillbilly ingenuity and make the correct enclosure because, man, plenty of us, where my mom lives in Eastern Kentucky and where my grandparents, of course, from, which is where my mom's from. A lot of folks have chickens out there successfully. You just have to make sure you have good gauge chicken wire. Don't use any of that plastic replacement for chicken wire. Don't use the plastic stuff because the predators go through that easy. But it's the good gauged wire they can't go through. Of course, that's just part of it. That's part of getting back to nature, is realizing nature, can be a boogabear. Tom says the solar panels certainly reduce our LG&E bill. God, I would love to see that. Our excess goes back to LG&E at wholesale per kilowatt prices, but we get charged retail for anything we pull from the grid. That said, the original break even was projected at 12 to 15 years. With the current regime, we might break even at 10. Yeah, exactly. And, Renaissance Hillbilly says she lets them run loose, free range. Well, the other night I was showing, I'm not sure if people saw it, but one of the ways to do it, Renaissance Hillbilly, is to get what they call a chicken tractor, which is having a rolling chicken coop. And it's got a huge run for them. And you just move that around your property ever so often. So they still are free ranging, but predators are not free to come in and get them. So you just move once they eat as much grass as you want them to, then you move them to another spot, let them sit there for a bit, fertilize, eat grass, and then move them once you feel they're ready to move. It works really, really well, and it really cuts down on losing them from predators. So, and it also keeps your neighbors from being upset if they go over to their property and crap on their sidewalk. All right. Tom says Paisley's brother and SIL have some chickens and some bees. Their hood isn't as restrictive as ours. Yeah, exactly. Must live in the neighborhood that or near by a similar neighborhood to where my son is in Taylor Berry. They're in Louisville. So y'all, really that's just what we got to do if we want to. Sister-in-law, SIL, got it. So if we want to break our dependence on the regime, we have got to break our dependence on all things military, industrial agriculture, and the petroleum is just locked right into that. So if you are raising as much of your own food as you can, and so there are plenty of documentaries you can watch where folks even in cities with just one lot and a house on the lot and a little bit of backyard, they're growing everything they need to eat for a family of 4. I even saw one documentary, a family of 6 in the city doing that. So we'll talk about that. We're going to have Stars on again this coming Tuesday, not today, of course, but next week. And along with Stars, we're going to have my first cousin. He lives in Boston, actually one of the suburbs of Boston. I'm trying to think wherever Boston College is. He's a professor at Boston College, lives in walking distance from Boston College, whatever the neighborhood that is in Boston. And he has an old house, wonderful old, probably 1700s, 1800s house. And it is on a hill, or the back side of his house goes straight down a hill. But he has terrace farming that and doing quite well from it. When I went to visit him, ate some of the stuff that he had grown vegetable wise, and gosh, was it great. He has attempted bees a couple times, but it just seems like the winters keep getting them. So hopefully he'll be able to figure that out soon. But otherwise, he's doing great with his urban farming. He's going to be coming on to talk. So we'll have both Stars, who we had on last night. We'll have her on again, along with my cousin, to go over how possible it is, very possible, for all of us to raise enough food for us to eat year round. You can, if you do it correctly and use a lot of the techniques that we'll be going over and having people share about, you can raise your own food, grow your own food for, I guess, probably 9 months out of the year, definitely 8, not just 3 like I've been doing. So that makes a big difference. And then you can save enough through canning to have your own food year round. So that's my goal this year, is to be able to do that. So we'll see how I succeed or not. We'll keep everybody updated. Yeah, Tom says, of course, that Paisley is my spouse. Renaissance Hillbilly says, we used to keep them when I was a kid, but there was a lot less wildlife then. Oh man, and that again goes back to, we look at, I'm sure Renaissance Hillbilly knows this. Yeah, same thing. When I was young, you couldn't hardly ever see a deer in Eastern Kentucky. I used to hike since I was literally knee-high to a grasshopper, 2.5, 3 years old. By myself, I would just go out in the 80 acres my papaw had in the hills there in the mountains and walk, hike, wander, get lost, get back home. Never got lost actually, but I would just wander and have a good time. But never did I see a deer. All the way up until, and that was from the 70s, all the way up until about the 90s. Then it started every now and then seeing some roadkill. And now, of course, man, deer are so well recovered. But it wasn't until I got out to Montana, but was living out there about 10 years ago, went to the National Elk Foundation, or the RME, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and went to their museum. I discovered something I never knew. And this is really important for those of us who have this idea that we want to live off the land and, oh, we could be like the country song, you know, and kill a buck and string a trot line and take care of ourselves. Well, during the depression of the 30s, here in America, we killed almost every single elk and deer and antelope that there was in the country. Almost completely wiped them out. That was, of course, a couple things. People starving, and then also folks that weren't starving, but they knew how to use their rifles and overuse them to kill deer, elk, antelope, and sell them to the big cities to, be able to make some money during the Depression. Same thing with ducks. That's why we had to really change the way we allowed duck hunters to hunt. We had to modify chokes, put regulations on the chokes, on shotguns, put the regulations on the size of the gauges you could use, because people were just going out. As the ducks were in the water, they just blast away 20 at a time and then go sell them. That's how we really decimated the waterfowl population. I never knew this until 10 years ago. It boggled my mind, because I always thought, oh, there's always going to be enough wildlife if we, as long as people pay attention to regulations, and I could always go out and fend for my family and myself if times get really, really hard. Well, yeah, during the Depression, we killed almost every source of natural meat. So, something to think about, right? Yeah. And Tom says, back to the title of tonight's video, what an idiot. Yes. So actually, exactly, paying the enemy to fight us. That's what we're doing. We're paying for Iran to fight us. We're helping them fund their fight. So I really hope that we can all say, okay, enough is enough. If we weren't using oil, Iran wouldn't have the funds to sponsor state terrorism. They wouldn't have the funds to be fighting us right now. And we wouldn't have a good excuse to go attack them. Not that, I'll leave that up to you whether we had or have had a good excuse, but we definitely don't have a plan right now that makes any lick of sense. None whatsoever. So, yeah, I am so glad that I am retired from the military and not on active duty right now. But I honor everyone that is, and I don't want to see any of my dear friends who are still on active duty. I don't want to see them misused and abused by an incompetent administration. So that is my guff for the night. I want to make sure, hey, we'll keep up this dialogue. We want to make sure that our county and our state can keep its agricultural heritage and focus at the forefront. Remember that is what made us a great state and still does. We just can't lose any more family farms, can't lose any more farmers, and we all need to become our own farmers. Use our own land, no matter how much we got or don't have. There are plenty of city cooperatives, as Stars showed us last night. Stars rents a place, but a house. She's not a homeowner, but she grows enough food to live off of on her own in a city. So, yeah, y'all remember, here in Kentucky, we know that our motto, united we stand and divided we fall, those aren't just throwaway words. They actually mean something deep. And in order to not fall apart and to stay united, we've got to love one another. We love our neighbor as ourselves here. We know that we are the keeper of our brothers and our sisters. We're in it together. That's what we had. Wendell Berry gave us a great quote about that tonight. So y'all, let's be good to one another. Bless your corazón, which is Espanol for heart. And remember those deployed overseas. Y'all, sorry it was so late tonight. This was the first soccer game of the season for my 8th grader. She had a wonderful night playing soccer. So that's why I started so late. But I'll try to be on a better time tomorrow. All right. Have a great one.
Your great grandfather didn't grow crops, runners because they were simple. He grew